essential nexus existed between the conditions and the impact of the proposed development, but the degree did not bear a reasonable relationship to the impact of the development. So if her development had been bigger, though those, and created more impact on the city, those conditions might have been valid. But to do what she wanted to do, which was a little expansion of, of her store and a little bit of more paving for parking, like, these are way out of balance. You're asking her to give up her land and spend thousands of dollars to build something for public purpose that's way out of balance with what she's proposing to do.
So they weren't really interested in the damage she was doing. They were more interested in the improvement that they thought they could.
Well, you had to look at both sides of the equation. Yeah. The conditions, let's say the conditions would have, cost her 25% of her land area to be dedicated to the public, and to build something that cost $100,000, when all she wanted to do was add 1,000 square feet, to her building. Just disproportionate. The nexus was there. Like what we saw in the Coastal Commission in the Nolan case, there was no nexus. The condition didn't advance the stated public purpose at all. Here, in Dolan, there was a nexus, but it was just overbearing. It was too much. They were asking for too much. And both of those rules are something, they kick around in the back of your head, and you wake up in the middle of the night when you realize, you're thinking, this doesn't seem right that the city is asking this of me. It just doesn't seem right. And then you wake up in the middle of the night and you realize, oh, there's no nexus. They're asking me to contribute. Okay, let's say I'm building a retail center, and they want me to contribute to pay a park impact fee. There's no nexus. I'm not bringing any new residents to the city who need park space. There's no nexus. So you realize, and you have that discussion with the city, with your attorney and the city attorney the next day. Or, it's only 1,000 square feet, and they want me to pay $500,000 in impact fees. Maybe there's a nexus, but they're just asking for too much. These are the rules. These are the cases that govern those things. And then more recently, right here in Florida, Coons versus St. Johns River Water Management District. So the United States Supreme Court overruled the decision of our own state Supreme Court. So it takes those Dolan and Nolan rules that we've just talked about and applies it to cases where there was no actual exaction of land. All they did was create a demand for it. And the language, as a development lawyer, I love this language. Extortionate demands for property in the land use permitting context run afoul of the takings clause. Not because they take property, but because they impermissibly burden the right not to have property taken without just compensation. So the Water Management District imposed a condition that was invalid, and the developer said, I don't want your permit under those conditions. So the Florida Supreme Court said no taking happened because they declined the permit. And the Supreme Court said, no. You government are not allowed to reach that conclusion with invalid conditions like that. Your people who own property have a right not to have the property taken without just compensation. They shouldn't have to face that decision of take my permit, accept the permit with an extortionate demand, or nothing at all, or I get no permit. So that was the context of Coons. Development was conditioned on an improvement of wetlands that was very remote from the property, is how the facts worked in that one. So exactions are a two-part test. It's a condition or a requirement imposed as a prerequisite to receiving a development approvals, like impact fees, the requirement to dedicate right-of-way, to pay a per-student station fee for residential development, to pay the school board, or to install sidewalks. There must be a rational nexus between the harm or the impact of the proposed development and the condition imposed. And there must be a rough proportionality between the anticipated impact and the exaction. That's what those very long Supreme Court cases lead us to. I'm trying to think more examples. Right.
They're only meeting in
Would that be also called a CDD?
Well, what is a CDD?
What was it again?
It's a community development district. A CDD is like a special purpose local government created under state law. It's really just a financing mechanism. So a developer that has thousands of acres and a multi-phase project that they're going to put in over years and years, they can go to the local government and have them create a CDD, and they're the only property owner, so they're responsible for they pay all the bills. But then they make an infrastructure plan, and they can sell bonds as a financing mechanism to put the infrastructure in for these. CDDs are really, sometimes they last for a long time and they become like a mini city government. There's a couple up in Coral Springs that aren't about infrastructure anymore. They're about HOAs on steroids. But really, the reason for creating a CDD is usually as a financing mechanism for infrastructure costs in large-scale projects. Because then the property owner, so the developer, they have a $10 million infrastructure plan, and they borrow money, they sell bonds, essentially borrowing money, and then when they sell out the property, the new property owners become responsible to keep paying the debt on the bonds. Is how CDDs work, mostly financing. So just let's see if we can think of a few more examples of how an exaction might be, a situation in which an exaction might be invalid. I mentioned a requirement to pay park impact fees for a non-residential development, okay? No nexus. When you're not building residential, you're not creating any need for parks. Then, let's say it is a residential development, but there are parks available that satisfy whatever the level of service is for that city, and they still want money and land from you for parks. That might violate the other part of the test, that there's no proportion between the impact of the development and the exaction. Those are the kind of things that come up. Dedicating land for right-of-way is usually, we don't fight over that too often anymore, because developers need the roads too. So many of these exaction requirements are good for developers, because they put all of us on the same level playing field. If I'm going to have to pay a per unit school impact fee for my residential development, I know you're going to have to do it too. That means that economically we're on the same playing field. You can't, you're not going to get to sell your houses $10,000 cheaper than I have to because you didn't have to pay the impact fee. They apply equally to everyone. So developers don't really mind most of these. I mean, developers here in Broward County, I remember when dedicating land for a school in all the big residential developments in the West, everybody wanted to give land for a school, because then you had a school. And you could say, come, buy a house in my neighborhood, because we've got a neighborhood school, right? So there's a lot of this that yes, it costs the developer money, but it serves their interests as well. All right. That is what I have. So let me think about what we can best do with the next time. We're supposed to be here till 5:30? Or 5?
I think it's 5.
It was 4:30.
4:30.
Oh,
4.
We've gone over.
I don't remember. Let me look at my calendar. I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. But I talked about doing like a sample search to show you how you might find your how you might be able to find your case study. close this and get to the internet from here, right? So maybe one place that you'll start looking for your case study is at the Broward County Planning Council. They're the agency that administers the Broward County, the countywide land use plan. So projects, even projects coming up from cities, will most often have to go through an amendment process at the county. So here we go. You look at the Planning Council, at their agendas. Let's look at the January. So here's an agenda of the Planning Council. They've got business, 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 and then down here you get to public hearings on specific amendments to the county land use plan. This first one was an amendment to the Broward County land use plan that was proposed by the city of Miramar. But see this number, PCT? That means that it was a text amendment, not a map change. That's not the kind of project that we want to look at. You want to look for a project that had a land use plan map change. So here the next one, PC, okay? No T. We'll ignore the one that the PCT number that had a text change and focus on just the land use plan amendment. So what else can we figure out about this amendment? There's not much here on the agenda. I wonder what PC 19.1 was. Let's go look at the Broward County agendas and see what we can learn about it. Because amendments, bad typist. Amendments to the Broward County plan they come in from a city and they go all the way to the Board of County Commissioners. So let's find the County Commission agenda. So let's do a search. Let's search from January to May and look for PC. What did I say it was? 19? Let's see if it comes up. No, it didn't work. Work when I was at home. We're going to search agenda.
Thank you.
Maybe take the dash out.
What am I doing?
I mean, maybe take the dash out, just do PC and do it in quotation marks.
I don't know why I'm not finding it now. That was this is what I said. So we gotta go back and figure out why my search didn't work, but I think it is actually on this agenda.
If you do Control F, you can just search
subject of the land use plan amendment to be the Diplomat Hotel at some point. Because eventually I did find the agenda items. So here we are, PC 19-1. You know, maybe I went to the City of Hollywood's website and found what or read more about the amendment and found that it was the Diplomat Hotel. And so I just searched for Diplomat, and this is how I found it. And then you can go to the City of Hollywood and try to find and try to search there too. Okay, so this is one mechanism. I'm sure that it's clunky. It seems very clunky to you. But from here, from the City of Hollywood, I can look at their agendas, and again, now that I know that it's a Diplomat project, I can search for agenda items about the Diplomat Hotel and eventually find the city's version of that amendment. Then you can read the backup and decide if this is the type of project that you want to use. This was a land use plan amendment, so it automatically meets that criteria for the assignment a land use plan amendment does. It doesn't have to be a land use plan amendment, though. It can simply be a rezoning. Broward County doesn't do a lot of zoning anymore because they don't have very much unincorporated area. But what's a city that we want to look at their agendas to see if we can find? Why did I do that? Fort Lauderdale. So let's look at Fort Lauderdale.
What about, because the one I was thinking of doing was like an IDA in like a downtown area, so it was like taking the allocated square footage and like using what was put down in the PPRI code.
Whatever the city replaced their PUD with the IDA, the Innovative Development.
It was a Boca Raton project, so they just
Oh,
took all the residential square footage that was allocated in the PPRI.
Great, so let's see if we can find any rezoning ordinances by just searching the cities. Okay, so we've come up with a number of agendas that had hits with the term rezoning, so you can look at the agendas to you can find those rezoning ordinances and read a little bit about the description of the project and go deeper back into the city's records and try to see if the project meets the criteria. Okay, so here's one of them. Rezoning from residential single-family duplex low medium density to community business through the allocation of commercial flex. That's an interesting concept. So this may be the type of project that would work. So this is one method of searching for projects. Again, if you know a planner in a city and you want to make a phone call and see if that planner can suggest a project to you, that's fine. If you want to read news reports like The Real Deal, where there'll be a little blurb about a particular developer who just received approval, and you pull the name of that project and you start searching that way, that's fine. Any of these search mechanisms might work, but I realize that when you're not familiar, when this is not something you've done before, this isn't really intuitive to you. So I want you guys to spend some time trying to identify projects. Do you have any that you can use for these case studies? Do you have any better sense, based on this, of whether you want to do them in teams or whether you want to do them individually? Everybody teams, because you didn't have to find fewer projects to find, or you can all work together to identify a project? Okay. Do you want to set up your teams now? Do you want to take the next 10 minutes or
How large are the teams?
they can be 3 or 4?
3 or 4.
So if the team, if the team consists of 3 or 4 members and the presentation is 10 minutes, then we need to present accordingly? Because that's like 2-3 minutes?
You all need to participate in the presentation, yes. Yeah. All right, you guys want to tell me next class what your teams are and how you're doing on your project selection? And again, we can spend more time in class looking at your project, and I can look at it and start giving you feedback on whether it's going to meet the criteria or not.
I'm sorry, another question. So for this assignment, we're just creating a PowerPoint and presenting that PowerPoint, correct? Nothing else?
What you have to do, the background, the work you have to do is learn about the project. You need to you need to look at the files at the local government, or read, and at a minimum, read the application package and the staff review. You need to read the minutes of the hearings at which the project was approved, and you need to understand how it got there. You know, where, you need to research the records of the project to figure out what the challenges were, or what led to the denial, or how they got to yes, if it was approved.
So, I'm sorry.
It doesn't have to be constructed, it just has to have reached a final decision.
Okay, I'm sorry. So just the PowerPoint, no paper attached, showing all that information, is that correct?
Just the PowerPoint, unless I ask for the backup.
Sounds good, thank you.
If there's something in your PowerPoint that creates suspicion in me, that you're making it up, I'll ask to see the backup.
Question. So if they got denied a couple of times, we need to talk about each stage of denial, and then they finally got approval or whatever?
Yeah, get to the final point.
Okay.
And ask for the comments and responses before the staff report review of public records request. That's like the city essentially poem.
They can't really deny any of this, but making friends, okay? All of the planners that work for these cities, they've all been through these kind of courses that you're in right now, okay? They all got their master's degree in planning. They all suffered through these projects. They will identify with you, and they will try to help you for the most part. You can complain about me bitterly, make me the bad guy, whatever it takes to get them on your side. You can tell them horror stories about me, it doesn't matter, okay? Whatever it takes. That's the fastest way to get records if you can't find them online searching agenda backup, is to talk to somebody and get them to help you. If what they do is shuttle you to the city clerk's office to submit a public records request, you're kind of entering the twilight zone. Because yes, they have to respond under state law, but the timing, you just lose control of it completely. And sometimes just going there and looking like a pathetic student and going to the counter and saying, they'll help you. They'll commiserate with the position that you're in, and they'll try to help. And even I go to the counter sometimes and say, I really don't understand this. Can you help me? Anytime that's the business that they're in for the most part. And you can hit them on a bad day and they'll say no. But most of the time, local government staff will try to help you, and they'll try to help you as a student. Because you know what? If you're really good at this, they want good development. They want good developers coming into their city. They want good developers applying for jobs in their office. So they're usually pretty helpful. So those are my ideas for finding your projects. At the next class, you'll tell me what your teams are. If you have projects that you'd like me to approve, you can email them to me in the meantime. Otherwise, we'll spend some time next Saturday looking at those online and trying to get your projects approved. Okay?
Understood?
Yep.
All right, thank you all. Did everybody here sign the attendance sheet? I appreciate all the input and the participation today. Those of you who were quiet, you need to find your voice, okay? You need to participate.
It was like partially being ready with the lawsuit.
We'll ship it. Yeah, we'll ship it. Yeah, it's a little cool too. I'm gonna have a guest speaker in, on the 25th too, and I'm trying to work, so,
You home delivery also?
One got quote. Yeah.
the last time I cleaned out my closet, I finally got rid of all my dry space. I kept thinking that my kids would use them for my kids were involved in theater.